We're in a series called Eats with Sinners, and we're looking at this idea that we can share our faith, and through Scripture we see that's exactly what Jesus did, wasn't it? I mean, like when he came to earth, he spent time and built relationships and all those types of things. I mean, even when he calls Matthew, the very first thing they do is what? It's early in the year, you in your Bible reading, you ain't got there yet, but he throws a big party, right? We're going to look at kind of that same type of thing, because anytime we throw a party or we put a meal together, there's always kind of this question, right? Is it ready yet? Right? Here's the deal. We live in an extremely fast-paced society, don't we? And I think that that's part of the reason that we had such a difficult time with like stay-at-home orders and quarantine and all that. I mean, put all the other foolishness aside, but I'm just saying we have a hard time with that because we're used to just going and going and going. And we've not only got in a habit to where that's kind of our lifestyle, but man, we're passing that along to our kids and the next generation and the next generation. And if you don't believe me, put a kid in the car, the first question out of their mouth is, are we there yet? Right? You ever take your kids on vacation? We did that one time, went on a cruise, drove all the way to Orlando, Florida in the car. And the next time we went on a cruise, I told Courtney, I said, I don't care what it costs, we're flying. Whatever it costs. Let me ask you this. Anybody here like to go out and eat? Okay. Let me ask you this. What's the longest you're going to wait? You can answer this online too. What's the longest you're going to wait for a table? Huh? Depends where it is. McDonald's, 30 seconds. Right? And we're going to check, see if the ice cream machine's working first. Right? All right, Sean, a nicer restaurant. Tell your favorite restaurant. Texas de Brazil. All the meat you can eat. Sent straight from heaven. How long you going to wait? Hour? Anybody else? How long you going to wait for a table? 20 minutes? Huh? 15, 20 minutes, kind of like your max, right? Goes back to the kids again, right? Because they're like, are we ever going to eat? I'm starving. I only had 13 snacks today. That's kind of where we are, though, isn't it? Like, we don't want to wait for anything. And I mean, especially you go to a restaurant, there are some already internal expectations we have when we get there, right? Like, we expect not to have to wait more than 15, 20 minutes, or depending on kind of how I feel today is how long I might be willing to wait, right? We have expectations that when we finally do get seated, that it won't be long before a waiter or waitress comes along and gets our drink order promptly, right? And then we have some expectations that they'll bring the bread immediately. I think that's one of the greatest things Texas Roadhouse does. They don't even make you wait. They're going to grab that mess before they get on going. I'm like, all right, just sit me right here by the meat counter and the bread. You're going to have an expectation that the waiter or waitress will be back promptly to take your regular order, that the food will be quick and hot, and it better be right. Let me just tell you, if I ever go out to eat with you, I don't send anything back. Nah. I worked in a restaurant. Ain't going to happen. That was before I knew Christ, so no judgment. It's like Planet Fitness. It's a judgment-free zone right here. We have an expectation that the food's going to be quick, it's going to be hot, and as soon as that's over, that they're going to be prompt in bringing our checks so we can get our kids and get out of there because they're already screaming. You see what I'm talking about? I think one of the greatest things, Burger King just kind of cashed in on that. Have it your way. But I think we've even took that a step further where it's like, have it your way right away. I just wish that the same sense of urgency that we have for getting a meal and it being right, I wish that we had that same sense of urgency for people to know the good news about Jesus. United Airlines Flight 93 was a domestic scheduled passenger flight that was hijacked by 4 al-Qaeda terrorists on board as part of September 11th attacks. The plane eventually crashed in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, following an attempt by passengers and crew to regain the control of the plane from hijackers. All 44 people on board were killed, including the hijackers. The aircraft, a Boeing 757, was flying United Airlines' daily scheduled morning flight from Newark International Airport in New Jersey to San Francisco International Airport in California. The hijackers stormed the aircraft's cockpit 46 minutes after takeoff. The captain and first officer struggled with the hijackers, which was transmitted to air traffic controllers. Zaid Jarrah, who had trained as a pilot, took control of the aircraft and diverted it back towards the East Coast and aimed it in the direction of Washington, D.C. and the U.S. Capitol. While the hijackers were taking control of the plane, the pilots may have taken such measures as deactivating the autopilot to hinder hijackers. Several passengers and flight attendants learned of previous attacks and crashes, and they made a decision to no longer wait, but to do whatever it took to take back over that aircraft. Anybody know the slogan kind of followed that aircraft? Let's roll. They knew they had to act immediately in order, maybe it was going to cost their very life, but they knew they had to act immediately in order to save the lives of others, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people. And they made a conscious decision to go, now is the time for us to move. That's the type of urgency I believe that we're talking about here. I think that's the urgency we're going to see in Luke chapter 10. I got to be real honest with you. As most of you know, I write my sermons 3 weeks in advance. And 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday, I was sitting in my office. I was traveling to the office. And on the way to the office, I wasn't real motivated about writing a sermon. So if this is terrible, God's fault. No. I was not real motivated on writing. I wasn't real motivated on studying. I wasn't real motivated about the whole process. And I sat down and I thought, okay, maybe this will be like a huge passage. It'll be like 97 verses and I'll be able to pick something out of here, right? And I sat down, I opened my Bible, and it was Luke chapter 10, verses 1 through 3. And I went, oh, thanks, Lord. You gave me 3 verses to work with. And immediately, I'm going to tell you, man, I'm going to tell you right now, immediately God opened his word to me and showed me this passage. And I got to tell you, as most of you know, I am passionate about people who don't know Jesus. And I'm going to tell you that if you are passionate about this, if you're not passionate about that, this right here will get you motivated to love the people around you, okay? So just open up to Luke chapter 10. We're going to be in verses 1 through 3. And I'm going to read the whole thing, and then we're going to work our way back through it, okay? Luke chapter 10, starting verse 1. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. He told them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Go, I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. Most of you sitting there going, what is he motivated about? I don't get it. If we take a step back to Luke chapter 9 and verses 1 through 6, we see that Jesus, it should be on the same page or flip over a page, right? Jesus sends out his 12 apostles to preach the good news. Now, it's key for us to understand and realize context and all those types of things. What Jesus has done is send out the 12 apostles and basically just said, hey, I want you to know that the good news about Jesus is for the 12 tribes, for the Israelites, for the Jews, all those types of things. It is for them. And then when we flip over to Luke chapter 10, Jesus is going to open this up to a whole brand new meaning. With this larger group, he then opens up this whole thing, right? He says this, after the Lord appointed what? How many? 72, very good. That's 72. Others, right? So we got 72 others plus the 12 apostles. He sent out how many people? Man, you guys are smart. 84 people. Jesus increases the number of people he sends out 7 times. He understands the urgency about the good news, the message of Jesus getting out, right? He's increased this number. And so now we have these 84 people who are sent out to spread the gospel message. There are a couple things we can learn from this. The first thing is never do ministry alone. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others, and he sent them out what? 2 by 2. He didn't let them go alone. You see, what Jesus understood was the burden of sharing the good news is difficult. It's tough. And I don't mean ministry is tough just like ministry that I do or ministry that Jake and Aaron do. I don't mean that ministry is just tough in that sense. I mean, anytime you're sharing your faith and you're living out the gospel, it's difficult. Ministry is tough. Brian Orhood, the planner of Lake Christian Church, taught me a few valuable lessons. This was one of them, that we should never do ministry alone. And as we can see in this passage, it's biblical. A couple reasons we don't do ministry alone. Ministry is hard and ministry is dangerous. I believe that Satan is at every corner waiting to just devour people who are trying to share the gospel message. And if it's an accusation, if it's a rumor, if it's a whatever, Satan will use that and other people to try to destroy the ministry of Jesus. And so when that comes, it's hard and it's dangerous. I'm going to tell you, when we start praying for people who are lost, when we start investing in people's lives, and we start really spending time with people, building those relationships, we're going to carry home some of those same burdens that they have because our heart's going to be focused on them. And when you do that, it can get hard. Secondly, ministry is hard. We should never do ministry alone. There ought to be someone we're always pouring life into, someone we're mentoring to be better and be something different. So what Jesus does is he goes, listen, you guys go out, but you go out in groups of 2 because you're going to need each other to help encourage and build each other up and strengthen. And when one of you's down, the other one can lift you up. And when the other one gets down, then you can carry on a little bit. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others, and he sent them out 2 by 2 ahead of him to what? Every town and place. You see, what Jesus does next is he says, listen, not only do you never do ministry alone, but let me just show you, this is no longer for the 12 tribes. This is no longer just for the Israelites, no longer just for the Jews, but we're going to send you out to every town, to every place. The gospel, the good news about Jesus is for everyone. We all have places we don't like to go, don't we? Places we wouldn't like to find ourselves. You know, those places we describe to people as, I'd hate to be there after dark. I'm afraid that those people need Jesus too. While we must be smart and make wise decisions, everyone needs Jesus. I wonder which group of this he sent out that just kind of went, you want us to go where? Have you heard the rumors about those people? You know that's not the best neighborhood in our community. Folks, I'm afraid that that's just a simple cop-out. Not only do we not want to go to those places and share the good news about Jesus, but we've conditioned ourselves really to not go anywhere. We've turned the Great Commission into like the Great Omission. We've turned go and make disciples to stay and let's hope some people show up. I think that's probably one of the worst parts about this whole pandemic, about the whole quarantine, about all of that foolishness, is that people then conditioned ourselves to be okay with staying at home, staying to ourselves, and not interacting with people. We were built for relationships. But Jesus says, never do ministry alone. And I'm going to send you out in groups of 2 because the good news about Jesus is for all those people. It's for everyone, everywhere, even those people you don't really associate with. And he says, listen, you tell them I'm coming. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others. He sent them out 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and every place where what? Where he was about to go. Jesus increases the manpower and sends them out in groups of 2 and to every town, to every place ahead of him. It's a valuable lesson to keep you and I humble about just what our job in this whole thing is. You see, we are simply workers of the field. We don't own the farm. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, starting verse 6. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but who? But God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants, the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor, for we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. In my very first ministry, I got to this church and I was doing some student ministry and those types of things, and had these 4 young men who I was pouring life into, and Courtney and I both were pouring life into them. They were at the house all the time. We were always out doing something crazy together. And I worked at that ministry about 2 years, and I continued to share Jesus with them. And they had great families, great parents. They were at church every week, every Wednesday night, every VBS, you name it. I mean, they knew who Jesus was, but they hadn't committed their life to Jesus, right? They just hadn't quite made room for him yet. And I resigned from the church and decided to take a position recruiting students for the Bible college where I was attending. And I got to my last Sunday there, and I already had it in my mind. I was going to walk up and I was going to preach the greatest sermons ever until this one. And I was going to preach this amazing message, and at the end of the message, these 4 boys were going to walk up and I was going to baptize them into Jesus. They were going to become missionaries and change the world. And I got done preaching the greatest sermon ever, and they all stay seated. And I got to tell you, I went back home Monday and Tuesday kind of devastated. Like maybe this was not it. Like if I couldn't even get 4 guys that I'd poured life into and invested to give their life to Jesus, like what am I doing? Kind of went through the rest of the week and got started with my new job. And on the following Sunday afternoon, the preacher of the church called me and said, I just want you to know all 4 boys walked up this afternoon and gave their life to Jesus. And I think God was teaching me a very, very valuable lesson in that, to say, you just plant and you just water, I'll make it grow. Don't get out of your position yet. Folks, I want to tell you, Now is the time for God's workers to do something. Now is the time for the church to step up and be the church of God. If you can't see it, just look around. God is sounding the alarm for his people to do something. You know, the oven alarm means at our house, typically the cookies are done. At our house, usually the smoke alarm means dinner's done. Or that the house is on fire, you got one last chance to get out. You know, the alarm clock sounds each morning. And you know what that tells me? That there's a brand new day full of opportunity and promise ahead. Maybe you don't see it that way. You hit the snooze and go, I'll get to that opportunity in a minute. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. You may not hear the alarm, but if you listen close and you look around, God is sounding the alarm. On any given day, 42% of 10 to 17-year-olds are exposed to online pornography. That's why you need to be here on Wednesday night for our Raised on Porn event. 33% of 16-year-olds, 48% of all 17-year-olds, and 61% of 18-year-olds in the U.S. have had sex at least once. In 2019, more than 1,840 children died from child abuse or neglect. That's just over 5 kids per day. Each year, 55.3 million people die. Each day, 151,600 people die. In just the hour we've been in this building, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,316 people have passed away. And just in the last minute it took me to share those stats with you, another 105 people have passed. God is sounding the alarm. Luke chapter 10, verse 2, he told them, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Ask the Lord of harvest, therefore, to send you out the workers into the harvest field. Maybe this morning you go, man, I hear the alarm. I just don't know what the field looks like. Let me share with you what the harvest looks like for you and I. The harvest looks like your coworker at lunch who starts crying when you ask, how's life? The harvest looks like your elderly neighbor who sits by himself in a chair where his wife used to sit. A harvest looks like your angry boss who asks why you go to men's prayer group. A harvest looks like your kid's teacher. A harvest looks like the guy at 7-Eleven on Saturday night who spent all he got on lottery tickets hoping, just hoping that maybe this will change his life. A harvest looks like a classmate you've reconnected with on Facebook. A harvest looks like a young couple at the end of the street who seem overwhelmed trying to take care of their small children. A harvest looks like the alcoholic father. The harvest looks like your teenage daughter who acts like she don't want to be around you, but she desperately needs you. He told him the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest. I'm pleading with you on behalf of God that you would take some time and look out amongst the harvest. And if you would just make a small bit of room for God to do whatever he wants to, not only with the harvest, but with you.